All the major news stories made simple and easy for your listening pleasure. We'll break it down for you in keywords. For this segment, we're joined by Adam on the line. Good morning, Adam.
Well, good morning, Lena.
And happy Friday.
Sorry, I'm not there.
No,
Happy Friday.
no problem. We'll be expecting you next week.
Yes, you will. Certainly, I will be there.
All right. Let's turn to some of our keywords this morning. This is our first pick of the day.
Moon return.
President Moon Jae-in is returning home after his trip to Europe, and eyes are now on what his next moves will be once he returns to the top office. While he was away, some big changes in domestic politics, namely. So what can we expect?
Yeah, he certainly did have a very busy schedule in Europe, didn't he?
Yeah.
And now the biggest attention is what he's going to do next. And the biggest attention, all eyes are on whether Moon will meet with the new head of the main opposition People Power Party, Lee Jun-suk, who happens to be the youngest ever person to lead a major political party. He, at 36, is actually only just 3 years younger than President Moon's eldest son.
Perspective.
So if they do meet, that could make for quite an awkward meeting, especially with the issues that they would need to discuss. Now, the two have spoken on the phone before, though. That's when Moon congratulated Lee on his new role as the head of the PPP. That conversation was basically full of praise for each other. Moon congratulating Lee and Lee wishing him Moon luck on his trip to Europe. But the reports suggest that a one-on-one will possibly be unlikely, but rather a group meeting with the leaders of other parties seems to be the more likely scenario here. Moon has also suggested rival parties form a task force with the government for better cooperation. So in line with that, I believe that the Changwon will organize a group meeting instead of a one-on-one. Also, eyes are on whether Moon's trip to Europe and the various deals and agreements made there will lead to a cabinet reshuffle at home as well. There were 2 or 3 ministerial posts Moon wanted to fill before his trip to Europe that have been in limbo for a couple of months now, but he hasn't been able to fill those posts yet, so that remains to be seen. And also, Moon may also meet the new U.S. point man on North Korea, Sang Kim. I mean, they've had meetings before, but as the new U.S. point man on North Korea would be a first if they were to meet.
And I mean, this is all important because it needs to operate in a timely fashion. I mean, not many months remain until the next 2022 presidential election, right? So, I mean, the time is quickly, I think it's of an essence at this point.
Right. So I think during the remaining part of this year and early into next year, I think Moon Jae-in is going to be really busy ramping up the diplomacy and the meetings and trying to get his agendas through.
All right. On to our second keyword of the day.
Olympics pushed through.
So Japan has announced the easing of a coronavirus state of emergency status and is pushing through with the Olympics as scheduled. It is currently scheduled to begin on July 23rd, so literally just a month away. What's the latest?
Yeah, Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga says the state of emergency in Tokyo and 6 other areas will be eased from next week. The state of emergency expires on Sunday and will change to kind of less stringent measures. The new measures will last until July 11th. That's just 12 days before the Olympics. Suga said the relaxed measures will focus on early closures of bars and restaurants. And his announcement comes as Japan has been seeing a bit of a dying down of the daily cases. But of course, with these variants popping up, that could all end as well. Suga also expressed his intent to hold the games with spectators, although he did actually urge people to watch it through TV if they can. However, organizing bodies are reportedly considering leaving open the possibility of holding the event without spectators if the situation of the pandemic in Japan worsens. Suga told a press conference that fans at venues will be required to follow a set of antivirus guidelines, such as wearing masks and refraining from shouting and chanting and all that stuff.
I mean, it does sound like a pretty anticlimactic sporting event, if you ask me. But I mean, that's the least of our concerns. I think the biggest criticism still is against whether or not it could be a safe and effective Olympic Games.
That's right. And therefore, organizing bodies are going to be meeting reportedly as early as Monday to decide how many or if any domestic spectators to allow or will be allowed. One of the ideas being floated is a 10,000 attendance cap, or no more than 50% of a stadium's capacity. But of course, this whole idea of actually allowing spectators at venues at all has been drawing a lot of public concern and outcry, and also warnings from health experts about a potential resurgence as well. I mean, these sporting events, there have been some sporting events that have allowed spectators back in. For football, for example, in Europe, there are some countries and some clubs that have allowed spectators back in, albeit with a limited capacity. But if you look at the games and if you look at the stands, there are so many people who are violating these rules of mask wearing and not singing or chanting. You see a lot of people with the mask down to their cheek, which kind of makes the whole point of wearing a mask redundant. They're sitting next to each other in groups.
They're chanting, they're high-fiving each other. So in practice, it is really difficult to observe social distancing and mask mandates when people are, let's say, excited or angered by a sporting event. It happens both ways, right?
Yeah, in the heat of the moment, people let their guards down. So it is a very risky move if they were to let spectators in.
All right, but it seems like they are, for the time being, trying to power through with their plans. On to our third keyword of the day.
China in space.
Who knew that it's exciting times for space exploration? Both public and private sectors are pumping in massive funds. This includes China. We're going to turn to China's space program. Now it seems to be making big progress, even sending 3 astronauts to China's new space station.
That's right. The 3 men are to spend about 3 months aboard the Tianhe module, some 380 kilometers above the Earth's surface. It will be China's longest crewed space mission to date, and also the first in nearly 5 years. The crew successfully docked with the space station just over 7 hours after the launch from Jichuan Satellite Launch Center in the Gobi Desert. The Shenzhou 12 capsule took off at 9:22 Beijing time on Thursday. The launch and the subsequent mission are another demonstration, actually, of China's growing confidence and capability in the space domain. In the past 6 months, the country has returned rock and soil samples to Earth from the surface of the moon, and also landed a 6-wheeled robot on Mars. Now, both are actually very highly complex and challenging endeavors. So to accomplish both of those in the space of 6 months is quite a feat. The crew's main job that are up there now is to get the space station into service. It's still early days. The remaining parts of the station will be launched in turn over the course of the next couple of years, with various parts going up. And so, China is certainly making a good progress in its space program. The U.S. might not be happy.
But the thing is, the U.S. didn't invite China to the International Space Station. In fact, they created a regulation to keep them out. So it kind of didn't leave China with another choice. But I suppose that rivalry, if it could be any more stringent, it's there.
Right. And we all believe at this point there's no politics in space, but obviously with the US not allowing China into the International Space Station, China has done it themselves. And now there's 2 areas where astronauts can live in space now, I guess.
More options? So it seems, at least, for the time being. On to our 4th keyword of the day.
U.S.-China summit.
All right, so following Joe Biden's cordial yet tense talks with his Russian counterpart, the U.S. president is now reviewing with another adversary, China.
Yeah, that's right. Another very awkward meeting likely here. The U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the 2 leaders are due to take stock of where the 2 countries are in the relationship. Now, Beijing was angered by the G7 communique, which criticized China's alleged human rights abuses in its Xinjiang region, as well as the issues surrounding Hong Kong. That communique with that statement was actually urged by President Joe Biden. Now, the communique also called for thorough investigation of the origins of the coronavirus in China. That's also likely to be a very key agenda item if the 2 leaders talk. Sullivan told reporters that the two nations will sit down to work out the right modality for the two presidents to engage. He added that it could be a phone call or a meeting on the margins of another international summit, namely the G20, or something else. He didn't really elaborate on what that something else would be. I don't know how else you would meet or talk if it's not by phone or in person. It could be, it could be a virtual. Could be a video conference, who knows? But anyway, Biden and Xi are both expected to attend the G20 meeting in October, hosted by Italy. That's possibly a venue for such talks. We'll have to see.
I think they were trying to be vague. And in that accomplishment, you're right. They did state the obvious, didn't they?
Yeah.
On to our fifth keyword of the day.
No yellow.
Oh boy, turn to Biden's son now, who is in hot water over his use of a derogatory term for Asians. So what did he say and how did the story come about?
Yeah, the funny thing, or the not so funny thing actually, is that it's not the first time that Hunter Biden has been in such limelight. Now, reports say that Hunter Biden used the racial slur yellow to refer to Asian women in a January 2019 text message to his cousin Caroline Biden about getting fixed up with someone. So Caroline Biden was trying to set him up with someone, and basically Biden replied, no yellow. Now, the conversation was preserved on Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop and was first reported by the Daily Mail. So that kind of sends a message: don't leave any electrical devices abandoned, because you never know what kind of skeletons might come out.
The thing is, I mean, the way we do have a zero tolerance for these kind of racial derogatory terms, but I do also question the journalistic integrity of someone that goes through an abandoned laptop to, I don't know, revitalize data. I'm not quite sure if you're stepping overboard there.
Yeah, it could be because that, as I said, this isn't the first time that he's been in such limelight. So he has been kind of a target in this sense.
Yeah.
Now, referring to that January 2019 text message, when asked about if he preferred domestic or foreign, Hunter apparently replied that a domesticated foreigner would be best, but, quote, no yellow. Obviously referring to Asian people.
Yeah.
Now, this is, as I said, not the first time these text messages have revealed instances of racist language. Last week, so in the space of just 2 weeks, in fact, it was revealed that Hunter had repeatedly called his white attorney the N-word, which is quite ironic because he's a white attorney, but it seems to be he's using the N-word very casually and very without knowing, frequently, without really understanding the ramifications of it. The message appears to have been sent after Hunter ended his relationship with Hallie Biden, the widow of his late brother Beau Biden. That's the latest text message anyway. Now, the publication of Hunter's message referring to Asians as yellow comes actually just after President Biden signed into law that measure aiming to fast-track probes of coronavirus-related hate crimes against Asians. And it also comes amid a surge in physical attacks against Asian Americans. We reported on one that happened most recently just a couple of days ago, didn't we, on the show?
That's right.
And there's been a staggering number of increased such attacks. However, Hunter's father, actually, Joe Biden, has actually his own history of using racially charged language towards South Asian people. All the way back in 2006, he said that, quote, you cannot go to a 7-Eleven or Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. So there seems to be some kind of this casual racial slur that's happening within the Biden family. And considering that Joe Biden as president is trying to deter such anti-Asian hate crime, it seems a bit hypocritical at the moment for me.
And that's why there is, I think, heightened coverage of these stories. And it's important to address them. And I also do believe in apologies, sincere ones. I also do believe in correcting the record if something is, let's say, wrong. So we'd have to wait and see how, if any response comes from the Biden family.
Yeah. And speaking of Hunter Biden, that was 2 times in 2 weeks, but actually a couple of years back, he was also in hot trouble for being a bit racially derogatory towards black people as well. But I won't go into too much detail in that.
So there is a track record there.
Yeah.
All right, on to our 6th keyword of the day.
Asylum-seeking footballer.
A goalkeeper for Myanmar's national team is seeking asylum in Japan after raising an anti-coup salute and refusing to fly back home given the circumstances there. So what's the latest?
Yeah, so last month, the substitute goalkeeper, Pei Lian Ang, raised the three-finger salute as the national anthem played for a World Cup qualifier against Japan. And that was obviously a sign that he is against the coup that is happening in his country. And late on Wednesday, he told a Japanese immigration officer at an airport in Osaka just after the match that he would not board a plane back to Myanmar. He expressed his wish to seek refuge in Japan and said that by returning to Myanmar, he would risk his life. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato actually told reporters that Tokyo will respond, quote, appropriately to his case. He didn't really provide details into the case. His comments are in line, actually, though, with Tokyo's new policy that extends Myanmar nationals stay in Japan for up to a year if they fear persecution at home. So it looks likely that this footballer or goalkeeper will get the asylum that he wishes, but if it will last a long time remains to be seen.
All right. Thank you so much, Aram, for today's coverage. Have a safe weekend. We'll see you next week.
Have a good weekend.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.